pulpit over to our own Rev Bryan Jessup.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you to the music makers. We are so fortunate to have Bryn as our music director. Thank you, Bryn. Fortunate to have other musical people too. Thank you to all the brave choir members. And men are accepted in the choir also. So if y'all come up, I'm feeling kind of lonely up there. And thank you to Travis Bonilla, who's going to add a musical note to the sermon today. The title of that sermon is Hanging Out with Heretics. And I want to start with the most common level as we understand heretics. A heretic is someone who swims against the stream. Originally, it was used to label anyone who disagreed with the dogmas of the Roman Catholic Church. But now, it's used more broadly to label any free thinker who holds opinions and then acts in ways that are contrary to the dogmas and the norms established by those in power. In relationship to this most common definition, you have been part of a long line of heretics. And I want to mention just a few of my favorites. Going way back, 3,500 years, the prophet Isaiah in the 8th century before the current era preached against greed and corruption. And he said, "Woe unto you who join house to house and field to field, till everywhere belongs to you, and the orphan and the widow have no place to lay their head. Surely your great houses will become desolate, and your vineyards and your grain fields will lie dry in the dust." He wrote that yesterday, and it echoes today. And Isaiah is one of our forebears. He was, by the way, sawn in half by the king of Judah. It happens. Being a heretic is not without its danger. So I'm going to fast forward about 1,000 years from Isaiah. We have the teacher Jesus in the 1st century of the current era. In a society where ordinary Jews did not have the means to follow all the laws of ritual purity, Jesus stood on the side of love. And when asked by those in power to define Judaism, he said, "We are called to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbors as ourselves. All the laws and all the prophets and all the rituals hang on those 2 commandments." Jesus, by the way, as you know, speaking of hanging out with heretics, ended up hung on a cross. He's one of our forebears. Jumping ahead another 1,000 years, Michael Servetus, a Spanish physician and theologian, who in the 1500s was the first person to observe and document the pulmonary function of the body. And also, he studied the Bible and wrote a book called On the Errors of the Trinity. And he was a great thinker, and he knew that he could persuade John Calvin to pay attention to him and change his mind about predestination and original sin and all that stuff. That's Calvin calling. Calvin was upset. Servetus talked to Calvin, and Calvin had Servetus burn the stick. Now jumping way ahead, another 1,000 years, almost, Viola Liuzzo. She was a member of the Social Justice Committee of the First Unitarian Church in Detroit, Michigan. in the 1960s, like a bunch of people in her social justice group, she became very active in the civil rights movement, and she went to Alabama for the Selma to Montgomery March. And while she was transporting some of her friends to an event on that march, Viola Liuzzo was shot dead in the road by 3 Ku Klux Klansmen. And Viola is one of our forebears. We stand in a long line of people who have swum against the stream of power. And in light of that common definition of heretic, we can see that being a heretic is often dangerous to one's health. But it's complicated too, because the root of the English word heretic comes from the Greek word heretikos, which means able to choose. Able to choose. And we all are able to choose. It's part of the human condition. It's a gift and a real challenge, because sometimes our choices are just not that great. One song out of the African American tradition that captures the anguish of making complicated choices. One song is called "You Gotta Walk That Lonesome Valley. You gotta walk it by yourself." This song came to me as I was working on this sermon. I said, "Travis, you gotta sing it for us." So Travis, come on up and sing that song for us. Thank you, Travis. I ask you to sing that because right here, right now, we're walking that valley, aren't we? In our personal lives, with our shoulders, and with our consciousness of what's happening in the world, with our consciousness of what's happening to our farmers, with our consciousness of what's happening to our immigrants. What are we going to do? We're walking that lonesome valley. How do we walk it today? How do we walk it now? Well, here's a paradox for you. While we have to walk that valley by ourselves, make our own choices for ourselves, we can support other people and be supported while we do it. And sometimes we can be surprised by what other lonesome valley walkers do. This past week, I was surprised by a right-wing MAGA conservative federal prosecutors in New York. Say with me, Danielle Sassoon, Danielle Sassoon. Did you hear about her? She clerked for Antonin Scalia. And she had to make a choice to keep her integrity as a federal prosecutor and as a person who supports the Constitution of the United States. And she refused to partake in President Trump's effort to dismiss the charges against Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, for corruption. She had to walk it by herself, but she was not unsupported, was she? Okay, here's a rhetorical question. How many other federal prosecutors resigned with her? Yes. Tell me.
4. 6.
4 of them.
6.
The other 5 of them. 6.
Thanks for getting us started. Because you're headed in the right direction. That's it. We walk for ourselves, we make decisions for ourselves, but it reverberates, and other people's decisions reverberate back to us. In light of Donald Trump's intention to round up immigrants in schools and houses of worship, President of the UUA, Rev. Dr. Sophia Betancourt, led the UUA board to stand on the side of love and join 27 other faith organizations in a legal challenge to that ruling. So we're not alone, but we still have to walk the valley. We have to make our own choices. So here's a story from my past. I am a reluctant radical. I mean, I was Oregon nice before I came to Oregon. You know, I'm not looking for a fight. But several years ago, I went to a Unitarian Universalist General Assembly where I attended sessions about the importance of protecting the separation of church and state. Edie and I were serving the congregation in Fresno at that time, and right the day after we got home from General Assembly, read in the paper that the power structure at City Hall in Fresno was wrapping itself in the flag in honor of the right-wing Christian nationalists in that city, and calling for a demonstration on the City Hall steps to support the U.S. as one nation under God. I wish. But anyway. But I said, well, that's kind of a misuse of religion and God. Somebody really ought to do something about that. And then I said, oh man, it's me. I should do something about that. I didn't have time to organize or anything, but I made a sign. And those of you who know me will be happy to know I also made handouts. I made a sign and handouts, and my sign said, one nation under God. What does that mean? And to whom? And I just stood there with my sign at the back of the crowd, and surprise, surprise, I was called out from the stage and told to get out of the country. Yeah. And then two little girls were delegated by their right-wing mom to rip the sign from my hand and throw it in the City Hall fountain. And then a Navy vet was delegated by himself to come up and yell in my face. And he said, "I have served my country." And I said, "Thank you for your service. I have served my country too. I was a school teacher for 10 years, and now I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister. I'm serving my country." He walked away. Well, it so happened, it was one of those times where you're doing something, and next thing you know, you're on TV, because the TV reporter was there and filmed that whole scene, showed it that night on TV, and this was before the day of the internet and Facebook and all that stuff. So Fresno Bee was the vehicle for public discourse, and there were a bunch of letters that came to the Bee from folks who'd seen that on television. And a bunch of the letters were actually from Republicans, and a bunch of the letters were actually supportive of my question. We really should talk to one another, many of the letters said. We really should explore what it might actually mean to be one nation under God. Now, unlike a bunch of our heretical forebears, I was not in physical danger. But I was a little nervous going in. So, you guys in the sharing this morning, you did my sermon. Somebody, I forgot who it was, said, "In this time I'm meditating a lot." Yeah, we have to take care of ourselves. So before I went down to City Hall, I meditated, and go figure I sang hymns to myself, because that's what I do. As heretics, we don't have to dine at the same spiritual table exactly, but we have to take care of ourselves. And we have to do what is going to put us in the place so when we're there, we can be bold and we can be brave, but we can stand with love inside us. When that Navy vet screamed and yelled in my face, God was with me. Love was with me. I really did say, thank you for your service. Here we are, trying to serve our nation as best we can. As heretics, we have to take care of our connection to our deepest selves. We have to do it in our own way. Jesus had to walk that lonesome valley. He spent a lot of time, though, away from the disciples out. He was a pagan. He spent a lot of time. Where did he go to pray? He went to nature. Where do Unitarian Universalists go to pray? We go to nature. We walk in the woods. We play a little bad golf, too. My golf buddies are in back. But it's a prayer. It's a prayer out there. God, what beauty. Fill me up with that. Well, so after that event on television for the next several days, I got a lot of support from the heretics in my congregation in Fresno. And that's a great thing about Unitarian Universalism. We think for ourselves, but we also gather to support one another. We understand that our spiritual languages might be different. I mean, I gotta self-confess, there's a lot of Jesus in me. And that may make other people get hives in this congregation because Jesus has been so abused. Can you imagine the President of the United States now claiming that he's a Christian? He's not playing Christian. He's playing screw your neighbor. What did Jesus say about your neighbor? Tell me. Love your neighbor like you love yourself. That's Jesus' message. I don't know who the heck President Trump thinks Jesus is. I'm hoping that he's going to have a conversion experience. Well, we gather together, and not all of us have the same spiritual makeup, but what we do have, we have the same values, don't we? We listen to one another with respect and caring. We support one another in loving community. I'm giving you, this is kind of an overview of our mission and covenant. Thank you, Ken, and the group of people, and Chris, and folks who helped us put that together. We share our deepest values. We listen to one another with respect and caring. Even though we say sometimes, oh, I'm glad that works for you. Huh, doesn't work for me. You know, I'm not sure I want to go to the barn dance. But, but hey, we support one another in loving community. We encourage one another in our unique paths towards spiritual growth and connection to our own hearts. We work with one another and with people beyond our walls to create a more loving and just and sustainable world. And we do our part right where we are. In the mid-1800s, during the Civil War, feeling the Lonesome Valley Blues, our forebearer, Unitarian minister, the Reverend Everett Hales, said, I'm only one. I am one. I cannot do everything. But I can do something. And just because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. And he did a bunch of stuff. He was a poet, a writer. For him, that something included writing Man Without a Country. It also included vigorous support of the effort to abolish slavery. He was an abolitionist. And he co-founded the Freedmen Aid Society. And he did that not by himself, but with a bunch of Methodists. Go figure. Freedmen Aid Society to assist the newly freed people after the Civil War. That's what he did. It was just something he could do. For us, as we make our choices, as we walk that lonesome valley, we may do some things. It may seem like it's small. It might be joining with others to support endangered immigrants. It might be working to protect the earth from plastic. It might be working to keep people fed and housed. It might be organizing against the war and genocide. It might be just supporting family and neighbors and friends in their time of need. Whatever we are called to do, it may seem small to us, but let us not disparage the importance of the small thing we can do. Our skills and our own efforts, let's never disparage that. Let us make our choices with courage and have compassion for ourselves and one another as we make our way forward. And as we do, may the blessings of God be upon us. May great peace abide in us. May God's Spirit illuminate our hearts right now and forever.